Now let's be honest with ourselves, no one's looking forward to going out and buying a practical hatchback. Something like a Toyota Corolla or the Hyundai i30 are your options out there. You've also got this to choose from, the old faithful from Mazda, the Mazda 3. I don't know what's been happening at Mazda, but they've been cooking up a really good version of this car. This one here is pretty special. 1, because of how it looks, 2, because of the transmission, 3, because of how it drives, and 4, because of how it's all put together. I really think that this is the most special normal hatchback you can buy. Now this Mazda 3 here is the middle of the range Evolve SP with the 2.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol 4-cylinder under the bonnet. That thing produces 139 kilowatts, around 188 horsepower, and 252 newton meters of torque, all sending power to the front wheels. And so at that $35,000 drive-away price point, let me show you what you're getting on the outside. First of all, that black grille, that looks great. You're also getting LED headlamps, but you do have halogen daytime running lights, which I think is just a little bit odd. But check out this color. This is called Platinum Quartz, and it looks so good. I really like the finish on this, and it makes it stand out against all those other really bland colors that other hatchback manufacturers offer at this price point. So I think this is a real standout color if you want something that looks a bit more premium. I also do like these black alloy wheels, which look great, and I think they really nicely contrast with all the other black elements here on this car. You've also got black side mirrors, and you've also got a black spoiler up top. And then towards the back, your rear wiper, you've also got your rear quad design lights, and I also do like the fact you've got these real dual exhaust pipes out the back, which actually don't sound too bad either. And if I'm going to be honest, I think this is the best looking hatchback in this segment by a mile. Now I really like the key design because it's very minimalist, because it's massive, but your 2 buttons to lock and unlock the car are just here on the side. That's the only buttons on this massive key. What's cool is that you don't have to take the key out of your pocket, because this has keyless entry and locking, which is quite useful. And you also do get a push button start over here. And so when you hit that start stop button, you put your foot on the brake and the clutch. Yes, that's right. The party piece in here is the fact that this has a 6-speed manual transmission in 2023. I know that sounds like a normal thing for most people, but I think this is a pretty special inclusion in a car like this in 2023, considering most people are going to just buy the automatic. And so I want to talk about the 6-speed manual transmission for just a second. First of all, look how it's finished. It looks so nice. And they could have just put a lazy, cheap looking shifter in here, but they didn't. It looks so good. The feel of it as well is really quite nice. Now look, they didn't quite match the same feel that you'll get in the MX-5, but these are the same people who do make the MX-5's gearbox, which is brilliant. So it does feel pretty good, and it does have some nice short throws, and it just feels really nice in the hand. It just looks good to look at as well. So for the looks alone, I would almost buy this, and it's just so easy to operate, especially how close it is to the steering wheel. That's quite good, especially if you love to drive a little bit more enthusiastically on some back roads and want to do some quick shifts. At least that jump to the steering wheel isn't too far away. Now here's what the door sounds like when it closes. And that's nice and solid. And you know what else is nice and solid? The build quality in here. Just like every other Mazda I've been driving over the past year, it is just a really impressive way that Mazda presents their interior, and it's no different for the Mazda 3. So you can check up here, it has soft touch materials, and then you have this even softer material up here, which is like a leather type material with red stitching that runs along the top here, which is real, especially along the doors here as well. And then on those doors, you do have a fabric there as well, so there's no harsh plastics, and you only get cheaper plastics towards the bottom, which is something that more upmarket cars do. And then the competitors in this space would just put cheap plastics up here on the dashboard and up on the top of the doors, but Mazda have resisted that. The other thing I really like are the climate controls here. So they feel really nice, got a nice little feel to them, to the dials, and they're really easy to operate, which I like quite a lot. You've also got plenty of storage here down in this little bucket, which also has soft material, so it shouldn't make too much of a racket if you put your keys down there, which is great. In here are your cup holders, which have little adjusters there. They're not massive, and any taller items are going to hit this top part, so they're not the best cup holders, but at least they're hidden away there. Now the other thing I really don't like, because Mazda have done a good job with all the materials except for this gloss black, which you can see here is already getting scratched and showing a bit of dust. I just wish they replaced this with another type of material, because I just really don't like gloss black plastic, especially here where you can see a lot of scratches. Now down here are your controls for your entertainment screen up here. This isn't a touch screen, but you do have navigation inbuilt. You also do have basic entertainment controls and your radio controls, but mainly you're going to be using this for for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You can't touch the screen, so you have to use these dials down here. And to be honest, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. It does help with reducing sort of reaching forwards, but it does make it a little bit frustrating when you're using Apple CarPlay, when you have to sort of cycle through all the menus using this dial just to jump to another part of the screen, which you could easily touch. So while it's an okay solution, I think a touchscreen would also be appreciated, so people could choose whichever one they want to use. Now, this steering wheel is just remarkable. I love how this feels. It's really nice in the hand, and it's just a really nice round steering wheel. It's trimmed really beautifully as well, and I do like the presentation of the buttons along here and also the way the airbags package there. I think Mazda makes some of the best steering wheels in the game. So up top you have your heads-up display, and down here you have your digital driver display, which is here in the middle, and then you have analog dials here on the left and over on the right. But what's weird is that, you know, even though this is a digital display, you can put whatever you want there, Mazda have still made this look like a normal analog display. You can change how it looks ever so slightly, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So I'm not too sure why Mazda went to all that effort to put a screen there just to make it look like these analog dials here on the left and right. Now, the door bins here do look slim, but they do fit a large water bottle in there, so that gets nice points there. And I do like this little hidden cubby here for whatever you might want to put there, maybe a pair of AirPods or your actual car keys. Now, here you have some more controls for your car, and then here in the middle is your glove box, which is actually pretty sizable. It has a nice little divider in there. You have two USB ports in there, and you have a 12-volt socket as well. And as for the glove box, it is decently sized, which I can appreciate. So, to be honest, the fit out of this car up front is really quite impressive. It feels nice and premium thanks to the materials, and I do like the simplicity of the layout of the entertainment screen here and the climate controls, and I also really love the presentation of the manual gearbox here. Now in the back we do have map pockets, we have air vents, and we also have some small storage bins here on the side. Now the windows fold down all the way, which is great, just giving you a bit of extra air in the back, but there's no USB charging ports in the rear, so that's a little bit slack, I think, by not including those on this car. But overall, these are very usable rear seats, which is very good to see. Now the boot here is pretty practical. It's nice and cavernous. There is a giant drop off here, so it might be hard to sort of drag items out like prams or any other big boxes thanks to this giant boot lip, but that does give you extra storage. There's a hard cargo cover here, which is removable, which is very cool to see, and you can fold those seats down in a 60-40 split, giving you even more room. Now underneath the boot floor here, we do have a spare tire, which is good to see, and everything you need to change one. So overall, a very practical hatchback in terms of how much stuff you can fit in here, and also thanks to that large opening and actual deep boot space. And what's cool is that you do have a lock button here, so you don't have to take the key out of your pocket when you're locking the car and closing the boot, which is very good. Now let's talk about warranty, servicing, and ownership. So your warranty is a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty, and your servicing cost will total $1,762 over 5 services, which occur every 12 months or every 10,000 kilometers. Now this car has a rating of 4.2 out of 5 from owners who have reviewed their car on productreview.com.au, and that score is an overwhelmingly positive result on many reviews, meaning that most people enjoy living and they've enjoyed actually owning the Mazda 3, which is a good thing, and it shows that it is pretty reliable over long term, which is what I would expect from a low stressed engine like this 2.5 litre motor that doesn't have any complicated additions like a turbocharger or any hybridization. It's just a simple, naturally aspirated motor that should last a long while. Now my top 3 safety features would include the front and rear autonomous emergency braking. I'm also a massive fan of the active lane keep assist. It's not as active as Hyundai and Kia system, but it means that if you do deviate towards the edge of your lane, it will steer you back towards the middle of the lane, which I think is quite useful. And finally, the inclusion of a reversing camera here is very good, especially when you have those really thick C-pillars, which can be a bit of a blind spot. So it's nice to have that reversing camera just to see the full field of view behind you. And what I think is really cool and a really nice attention to detail is that Mazda didn't put any ugly sprayer nozzles on the bonnet. Instead, they included them here in the actual blade of the wiper, which is just something you don't really see at this price point. So major plus points to Mazda for including that. Now let's start off this driving section with 3 things I don't like about driving this car. Number 1, the engine. It is a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It produces enough power, but it could do with a little bit more, or at least an option to upgrade, because the US gets an all-wheel drive turbocharged version of this car, and we don't get that as an option with a 6-speed manual here. So I think that would be really cool and actually attract more buyers like myself who love the look of this car, love the build quality, but just want a tiny bit more power. Second of all, this side mirror mirror here on the right-hand side. It is zoomed in. I'm not too sure why that is. I'm sure it's for a safety measure to see more behind you, but it just really distorts your perspective, especially since that other mirror is not zoomed in. It's like a conventional zoom of your mirror. So that sort of like zoomed in look outside that mirror can be a bit confusing for when you're trying to do some maneuvering or you're just getting used to this car. So that's something I don't really like. And then third of all, no front parking sensors. This thing has a really long bonnet, and like just trying to get really nice and close to the car in front of you can be a little bit difficult. But that's it for the bad things. This car is really nice to drive. So the 5 good things I like about this car. 1, the gearbox. Easy to shift, really nice to look at, nice to touch, and has good engagement. And it's also not too long of a throw, so it means that you can shift and you're in the gear before you know it. Another cool little thing is that if you're using your radar cruise control and you need to change down gears, which is something that happens quite often, or change up a gear, it won't disengage the cruise control, which is just so useful, especially since other cars usually think that if you're changing gear, you should turn the cruise control off. So that's just great for something like a long road trip. And I just really like how this thing feels. The clutch point is also very light, so it's really easy to get a hold of driving this thing, smoothly, quite easily. And it's something that new drivers would actually find very easy to learn on as well. So it is a really good, well-rounded gearbox, but it's not quite as engaging as the one you'll find on the Mazda MX-5. Number 2, this is a very quiet car. The sound isolation, the aerodynamics, everything like that means there's minimal road noise and minimal wind noise, which is great. And the engine is not a droning engine at all. That larger displacement allows it to relax and just become something in the distance rather than something that's creating a racket when you start to accelerate, which I really quite like. So it's a very peaceful cabin environment. Although I would recommend trying to upgrade these speakers because they are not the best set and they just don't have enough punch to them that you will find on a better set. They'll have a bit more bass and a bit more clarity to them, but they do the job just fine. Now my seating position, check it out. I feel like this is a little bit different from other hatchbacks I've driven. I don't feel like I'm sitting up, I feel like I'm sitting down in the car. This large steering wheel is really easy to get a hold of. It feels very JDM-like. I was driving the Nissan Z and this thing just feels very reminiscent of that. And it's a great thing because I love large round steering wheels, and it just means that you feel like you've got a hold on the car pretty easily. And if you want to start driving a bit more enthusiastically, it's very easy because the shifter's right close to you. So the seating position in this car is one of the best for a driver's car, and also something that's quite easy to get in and out of thanks to its ergonomics. So yeah, seating position is fantastic. And then talking about the sound, I was actually kind of surprised that the exhaust makes a tiny bit of sound. So if I start to accelerate, like it's nothing major, but it's just a little bit of something that just makes it a tiny bit more fun to drive this car than say a more quiet car. So those real exhaust pipes do make a tiny bit of sound like I showed you earlier, and it does add to the driving experience if you wanted to be a little bit more enthusiastic with your driving. And finally, the handling characteristics of this car. It's a nice blend between a sporty drive and a comfortable drive. So I can hit corners and actually have a bit of fun through them thanks to the sitting position, everything I've talked about, and the fact that this car is relatively flat through corners. But I can feel like this could be stiffer, which would help with cornering even better. I do feel it sort of starts to sort of let loose a little bit midway through a corner, which, if you want to do sporty driving, it just is a little bit, it's just not very motivating. It sort of just spoils the corner a little bit as the car starts to lift up a little bit as it's softly sprung. And it's more for comfort in daily driving and a tiny bit of, compliance through corners and making it fun to drive through corners rather than being a all-out hot hatch, of course. But this thing looks sporty, and I just wish there was maybe an adjustable setting or maybe an option for a handling package that could make more use of this car's clear ability to handle really quite well. Now, after living with this car for a week and driving it around, I can confidently say this goes at the top of my recommendation list when it comes to buying a large hatchback. Now, if you don't want a hybrid car, then I would jump into one of these. But if you are looking for a hybrid hatchback, then look, Mazda doesn't offer any strong options there. So that's where its biggest weakness is that it doesn't offer any alternative engine choices, especially if you're looking for something that has a little bit more punch to it than this naturally aspirated motor. But to be honest, for something that's low stress, should be cheap to run, looks great, has really good build quality, and is also really fun to drive, that's why the Mazda slots that #1 recommendation spot on my list. But like I said, if you're looking for anything different from this car, it might not be for you. But if you're looking at other petrol-powered alternatives like a Hyundai i30 or a base model Corolla, for example, around this price point, then it is really hard to beat the Mazda 3. And so thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this car in the comments. Would you buy it over a Toyota or a Hyundai? Let me know down there. If you have anything to say about your own car, make sure you leave a review at productreview.com.au because I'll use your review in future car reviews just like this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.